You know, when you think of The Godfather, you probably think masterpiece, right? I mean, it's one of the greatest films ever made, no question. But what if I told you the story of how it got made is, well, it's a cinematic miracle. It was a flat-out war between a young director, a studio that was terrified, and a vision that pretty much nobody believed in. So, let's get into it. Just try to put yourself in Al Pacino's shoes for a second. You've just landed the role of a lifetime, right? The part that's going to make you a star. But on set, all you hear are these whispers. The studio hates your performance. The crew is looking at you funny. And even your director, the one guy who fought for you, is starting to lose faith. I mean, this wasn't a film set. It was a total pressure cooker. But then, you see this number. From all that chaos and crisis came this, a box office juggernaut. We're talking about a film that for a while there was the highest grossing movie ever. It just smashed records, won Best Picture. And that performance, the one everyone wanted to fire, yeah, it became one of the most iconic in all of film history. Just incredible. So that's the big question, isn't it? How on earth did a film that the studio had zero faith in, directed by a guy who didn't even want the job, how did that become a legend? I mean, how does a project that is just teetering on the brink of disaster, full of doubt and fighting, turn into an undisputed masterpiece? Well, the answer is one heck of a story about creative guts. All right, so let's set the scene. We're going to wind the clock back to the early 1970s. Paramount Pictures, they're in deep trouble. They've just had a whole string of expensive bombs, and they are desperate for a hit. Now, they happen to own the rights to this best-selling book by Mario Puzo, but honestly, they see it as a massive risk. And you really have to get just how scared Paramount was. I mean, look at this. Their last mob movie, The Brotherhood, it totally flopped. They looked at Mario Puzo's novel and just thought it was sleazy, sensationalist pulp. Their first idea was to just shoot it on a backlot, set it in modern day, you know, just to cut costs and play it super safe. And get this, they offered it to a whole list of A-list directors like Sergio Leone, and every single one of them turned it down. Nobody wanted to touch it. So who did they finally get? A young Francis Ford Coppola who was drowning in debt. And his first reaction when they offered him the film? I don't want to do it. I want to do art films. He literally thought the book was a hunk of trash. The only reason, and I mean the only reason he took the job was because he was desperate for the cash to save his own film company. So here's the kicker. Nobody, not the studio, and not even the director, thought they were making a masterpiece. Not even close. So, with everyone basically hating the project from the start, the stage was set for an absolutely legendary showdown. What came next was just this constant, brutal fight between the studio's need for a safe head and Coppola's growing artistic vision for the film. And the biggest battle of all? It was all about the casting. And this just lays it all out perfectly. You have the two competing visions. For the key role of Michael Corleone, the studio wanted a huge star. Think Robert Redford or Warren Beatty, someone who could guarantee ticket sales. But Coppola, he was dead set on this totally unknown stage actor named Al Pacino. The studio wanted a simple, conventional gangster movie. Coppola saw a dark, sweeping family epic. And when it came to the look of the film, the studio wanted it bright and clear. Coppola and a cinematographer, well, they had something much darker in mind. So when the studio execs finally saw the first footage, they completely freaked out. All their fears were confirmed. This Pacino kid, he had zero on-screen charisma. He was just kind of there, quiet, reserved. Pacino himself later said he looked lumpy. He had none of that movie star magic they were paying for. And the order came down from the top. Fire him now. But here's the thing. The studio just didn't get. What they saw as a total weakness was actually Pacino's secret plan. He was playing the long game. See, Michael wasn't supposed to be this magnetic guy at the start. He's an outsider, a lumpy young man who's kind of there and not there. The real power, the whole point of the performance, was going to come from this shocking transformation, that big explosion of character in the restaurant scene, and then his final emergence as this cold, powerful, and terrifying enigma. The studio just wasn't patient enough to see it. And man, the pressure was just becoming unbearable. In the first week, the studio execs are demanding Pacino get fired. By week 2, Coppola himself, just buckling under all the pressure, pulls Pacino aside and basically admits this isn't working. Pacino's career is literally hanging by a thread. And then, in a total twist of fate, or maybe it was a genius move by Coppola, the pivotal restaurant scene gets moved up in the shooting schedule. This was the turning point. This was Pacino's one last shot to show them what he was doing. He nailed it, and in that moment, everything changed. Okay, so it wasn't just Pacino's performance that the studio didn't understand. The entire visual identity of the film was a massive point of conflict. The look of The Godfather, it was just as revolutionary and just as much of a fight as the casting was. And this is where we meet the other key rebel on that set, the cinematographer Gordon Willis. His nickname was the Prince of Darkness, and for good reason. He completely rejected the bright, flat, everything is visible lighting of classic Hollywood. His whole idea was that shadows and darkness weren't just for atmosphere, they were tools to tell the story, to create this deep sense of moral ambiguity. He would do this revolutionary thing where he'd light actors from directly above, which often left their eyes completely hidden in shadow. And this whole visual language was so carefully thought out. Willis was inspired by the dramatic light and shadow you see in paintings by Caravaggio. He used this warm, kind of desaturated, sepia-toned look to make it feel like you're looking at an old family photograph. The camera itself almost never moves. It's static, locked off, which makes you feel like you're just a fly on the wall, a passive observer to all these dark secrets. And of course, the studio absolutely hated it. They kept complaining it was too dark, that you couldn't see the actors' eyes, but Coppola and Willis, they stuck to their guns. So this vision, this thing that was forged in all that conflict and all that darkness, was finally finished. And when the film was released, the result was, well, it was historic. And the biggest irony of all, the very things the studio fought so hard against, the unknown actor, the dark and shadowy look, that serious, somber tone, were the exact things that audiences and critics went crazy for. I mean, just look at the numbers. They really do speak for themselves. The budget was about $6.5 million. Pretty modest. The box office, nearly $300 million worldwide. And it didn't just make money, it cleaned up at the Oscars, taking home Best Picture, Best Actor, and Best Screenplay. It was definitive proof that audiences were starving for films that were complex, adult, and artistically bold. But its impact went way, way beyond just the box office. For Coppola, this was never just a gangster story. It was a powerful metaphor for capitalism in America. In fact, he embeds that theme from the very first line of the movie, I believe in America. He saw the Corleone family as a dark mirror of corporate America, this ruthless, profit-driven machine where family and business, loyalty and brutality are all tangled up together. It's a twisted take on the American dream. So let's bring this whole story full circle, because this is where it gets really interesting. For the film's 50th anniversary, Paramount Pictures, yep, the same studio that fought Coppola every step of the way, launched this massive project to preserve his original vision for a whole new generation. And you know what the biggest challenge was? It's this incredible irony. As Andrea Collis from the Paramount Archives put it, a film like The Godfather has a curse. It was loved too much. Because it was so popular, they made thousands of prints to show in theaters all over the world. And all that printing just wore out the original negatives. They were torn, stained, faded. The masterpiece was literally being loved to death. And the effort to save it was just staggering. I mean, look at these numbers. The restoration team had to scan over 300 cartons of film just to find the best possible pieces. They spent over 4,000 hours just repairing stains and damage on the film, and then another 1,000 hours on color correction, going through it frame by painstaking frame. It's just a monumental amount of work. And here it is, the absolute best part of this whole story. The entire goal of this massive, multi-million-dollar restoration was to perfectly restore that dark, shadowy look that the studio once fought so desperately to brighten. All that time and money spent making sure the film was just as dark and ambiguous as Coppola and Willis always wanted it to be. You just can't make this stuff up. So it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Which story is actually greater? The one we see up on the screen, or the incredible battle that it took to get it there? We all celebrate The Godfather for the amazing story it tells, but maybe, just maybe, the even more remarkable story is the one that happened behind the scenes. A story that proves that sometimes the greatest art isn't born from everyone agreeing, but from conflict and from an unwavering belief in a singular, crazy vision.